Crafter's Library. In this video I'm going to show you how to create this Thanks for All You Do greeting card. So let's get started. You're going to need a 4 1/4 by 11 inch piece of Daffodil Delight cardstock from Stampin' Up! And I've gone ahead and scored it down the center at 5 1/2 inches with my paper trimmer and scoring blade. And I'm going to fold and crease along that score line with my bone folder, creating a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch standard size card. Once you have this complete, you're going to set this aside. And you're now going to need a piece of vanilla cardstock that measures 1 1/2 inches by 3 7/8 inches. And I always like to add a little bit of dado to my grid paper when I'm working with smaller pieces of cardstock that I'm going to stamp on. So I've just aligned that with my lines on my grid paper, and you're now going to need your greeting. I'm going to be using the thanks and the For All You Do greetings found in Paper Trays Thanks Always stamp set. I'm going to stamp that using my Early Espresso classic ink onto my vanilla cardstock. So I'm going to ink up the thanks portion of this, and I'm going to stamp this a little bit centered slightly to the left hand side onto the vanilla cardstock. And once you have that stamped, then you can set that part aside, and now you're going to add in the For All You Do, or the smaller bottom portion of your greeting. And I'm going to stamp this below towards the right hand side of my cardstock. Once you have your greeting stamped, you can set aside your ink. I'm going to remove my cardstock here so that I don't smudge my greeting. Just removing my dado so I can still work. And now you're going to need a piece of dark chocolate cardstock, and this is from Paper Tray, that measures 2 1/2 inches by 4 inches. You're going to need a punch. I'm using EK Success punch, the open scallop edger, and I'm going to punch both 4-inch sides. So I like to insert my cardstock so that I can see my scallops here, and you're going to have to punch each side so that the scallops are the same on both sides. So just make sure that you align it in one corner before you move on, punching down one side and then repeat that on the other side edge, inserting this into the punch in the same manner that you did your first one, so that your scallops are aligned on both edges. It would look a little funny if they weren't mimicking each other, or if they were off slightly. You want to make sure you can get as close as possible when you're punching on two sides of one piece of cardstock. So this way you can see that I have almost exactly the same punching. It's off slightly, but it's fairly close. So I'm just going to clean up my work area, set aside my punch, and now I'm going to bring back in my card base, and we're going to start to assemble this card. So I have my card base. You're going to need a piece of designer paper that measures 3 7/8 by 5 1/8, and this is found in the Paradise Beach collection from Echo Park, and this is in the 6 by 6 inch pad. So it's this beautiful polka dot pattern that I drew my colors from. You're then going to need a second piece of dark chocolate cardstock that measures 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. You're going to center and stick your designer paper to your dark chocolate piece with some double-sided adhesive, leaving equal borders on all 4 sides. Once you have that stuck down, we're going to add this to our card base, and I'm going to stick this down using some dimensional foam. So I'm just going to apply some dimensional foam pieces in each of the 4 corners. Remove the backing. And I'm going to center and stick this to my card base, leaving equal borders on all 4 sides. Once you have that assembled, you can set this aside for a moment, and you're now going to bring back in your greeting and your scalloped piece of chocolate, dark chocolate cardstock. I'm going to center and stick my stamped greeting onto my scalloped cardstock, leaving equal borders on all 4 sides. Now that you have that stuck down, you can bring your card base back in, and we're going to actually stick this down to the card base, aligning the left and right edges of our greeting with the left and right edges of our dark chocolate bottom mat there. So you're going to stick this down using some dimensional foam. So again, I'm just going to apply one foam square in each of the 4 corners. Remove the backing. And you're just going to stick this down, again aligning the left and right hand edges. And because of the scallop, you do want to make sure that you don't get a perfect line of designer paper polka dots through the scallops. It would look a little funny, so you just want to make sure that you offset that slightly. So I've dropped this down about an inch from the top edge of my card, or of my mat there. Now you're going to need 3 buttons, and I've pulled the button colors from my designer paper. So these are paper tray buttons, and I have this bright yellow, bright green, and soft pink color. And I'm going to thread some embroidery floss through my button. So I'm just working with a nice dark rich chocolate embroidery thread, and I'm just going to feed the ends through my buttonholes. I didn't have a solid brown baker's twine. If you wish, you could use the baker's twine. So I'm just feeding them through the buttonholes, and then I'm going to stick the embroidery floss to the back of the button with a mini glue dot, trimming off the ends. So you're going to repeat that with your green button, and then I'm going to use a larger piece of my embroidery floss, and I'm going to tie it into a bow coming out of the front of my largest button. So this may take about a 10-inch piece of embroidery floss in order to feed it through the buttonholes, and then tie this into a small bow at the front. And you can play with the size of your bow by pulling on the tails and adjusting that so that it's an appropriate size for the button and the card. And you can trim this off. You're going to also feed your embroidery thread through your button, your green button. So all 3 buttons will have your embroidery thread on that. Again, sticking that down to the back with a mini glue dot, trimming that off so that your ends don't show. So now I'm just going to tidy up my work area here, setting aside the things that I don't need. I'm going to bring this in, and I'm just going to lay my buttons out. You're going to stick these down with mini glue dots. So I'm just going to apply a mini glue dot to the back of my button with my bow on it. I'm going to stick that down in the left hand corner of my matted greeting. My second one. So I'm just sticking these down in a cluster. And I found that my third button just needed a little bit of pop, so I'm actually going to use one of my dimensional foam pieces on the back of my last button, and I'm going to stick that down in my cluster, slightly popped up. And there you have your finished Thanks for All You Do greeting card. I hope you enjoyed stamping with me.